Breaking news from the Indo-Pacific. Tensions are reaching a boiling point in one of the world's most strategically vital regions. An international incident is unfolding in the South China Sea, a region already fraught with territorial disputes and military posturing. The United States and China have come dangerously close to open conflict near the highly contested Scarborough Shoal, a flashpoint that has long been a source of friction. The USS Nimitz, a powerful U.S. aircraft carrier, was conducting routine operations when it was suddenly intercepted by multiple Chinese warships. Chinese commanders demanded the U.S. vessel leave immediately, claiming it was violating what they assert as Chinese territory, despite international disputes over these waters. The American crew stood firm, calmly insisting they were operating in international waters, as recognized by most of the world. Tensions soared as both sides exchanged heated warnings over radio, each refusing to back down. This is more than a minor dispute. It's a direct challenge to U.S. naval presence and freedom of navigation in the region. For decades, America has guaranteed freedom of navigation here, ensuring safe passage for global trade, but China is now pushing back with unprecedented force. This standoff signals Beijing's intent to enforce its sweeping territorial claims, even if it means confronting the U.S. military directly. The world is watching with growing alarm as a direct clash between these superpowers could spiral out of control and trigger a much wider crisis. The South China Sea is a critical waterway. Trillions in trade pass through each year, connecting economies across Asia, Europe, and beyond. Any disruption here could have devastating global consequences, sending shockwaves through supply chains and financial markets worldwide. The immediate question on everyone's mind: what happens next? Will diplomacy prevail, or will military action escalate? Will cooler heads prevail, or is this the start of a larger conflict that could draw in other nations and destabilize the region? The decisions made in Washington and Beijing in the coming hours are crucial, with the potential to shape the future of the Indo-Pacific for years to come. The stability of the entire Indo-Pacific region hangs in the balance, as military forces remain on high alert. This is the kind of event military analysts and diplomats have long feared. A miscalculation here could have catastrophic consequences. The risk of escalation is real, and the world is holding its breath, hoping for a peaceful resolution. The situation is fluid and rapidly evolving, but one thing is clear: the stakes have never been higher for peace and security. The South China Sea is now the world's most dangerous flashpoint, and the next moves by both sides could define the course of history. The incident was a masterclass in naval brinkmanship, a tense display of power and nerves on the open sea. The USS Nimitz, one of the most formidable aircraft carriers in the world, was conducting a freedom of navigation operation, directly challenging China's sweeping maritime claims in the South China Sea. This time, China was ready. A formidable flotilla of warships, including the advanced Type 055 destroyer, moved swiftly to box in the American carrier, signaling a new level of assertiveness. Chinese commanders issued stern warnings over the radio, accusing the U.S. of illegal intrusion and demanding an immediate withdrawal from what they called Chinese waters. The American captain, unfazed, calmly cited international law and the right to innocent passage, insisting that the U.S. Navy had every right to be there under global maritime rules. In response, Chinese ships performed high-speed maneuvers, coming dangerously close to the Nimitz, their intentions unmistakable. A clear show of force and willingness to escalate. The risk of collision was high. Tension on the bridge was palpable, with every crew member on edge, fully aware that a single miscalculation could spark an international crisis. Facing overwhelming force and the real possibility of disaster, the U.S. commander made a tough call, altering course to de-escalate the situation and avoid a potentially catastrophic incident. Chinese state media quickly broadcast images of the Nimitz sailing away, framing it as a major victory for China and a sign of American retreat. The Pentagon, however, avoided the word retreat, instead emphasizing the importance of de-escalation and the need to prevent unnecessary conflict in these contested waters. But the message was clear to the world: China is now physically blocking U.S. forces from entering disputed areas. A bold move that signals a new phase in the rivalry. This marks a major shift in South China Sea power dynamics, with control of these vital waters increasingly contested and uncertain. The unwritten rules of engagement that once kept the peace may no longer apply, as both sides push the boundaries of acceptable conduct. The risk of future encounters turning violent has just increased, with every standoff raising the stakes for both navies. China's willingness to confront the US at sea is now undeniable, and their resolve appears stronger than ever. The US Navy's freedom of movement is being directly challenged, forcing American commanders to rethink their strategies. Both sides are testing each other's resolve, searching for weaknesses, and gauging how far the other will go. The world has entered a new era of high-stakes naval standoffs, with every incident watched closely by global powers and the international community. The South China Sea is now a proving ground for global power, where the balance of influence is being tested daily. The next encounter could be even more dangerous, with the potential for miscalculation or escalation always looming on the horizon. Scarborough Shoal is a small triangle of reefs, but its strategic value is immense. It controls access to vital sea lanes. 1/3 of global shipping passes through the South China Sea. Whoever controls the shoal can influence commercial and military movement in the region. For China, building a base here would complete a strategic triangle, giving it near total control over the South China Sea. This would allow Beijing to project power deep into the Pacific, threatening US allies and interests. The Philippines claims the shoal, backed by a 2016 tribunal ruling, but China ignores it. Beijing seized control in 2012 and has occupied it since. For China, Scarborough is about sovereignty and regional dominance. For the US and its allies, stopping China's militarization is a security imperative. The shoal is now a flashpoint in the contest for Asia's future. The stakes are not just local, they're global. Control here could reshape the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific. That's why the world is watching so closely. The standoff didn't happen in isolation. It's part of China's steady, calculated push to control Scarborough Shoal, a strategic flashpoint in the South China Sea that has drawn global attention. New satellite images reveal a large floating barrier blocking access to the lagoon, enforced by Chinese Coast Guard vessels that patrol the area day and night, making their presence unmistakable. This physical blockade is a clear escalation, making it nearly impossible for Filipino fishermen to enter waters they've relied on for generations, cutting off livelihoods and raising tensions. Analysts call this salami slicing, a strategy of small, incremental steps that over time add up to major strategic gains without triggering outright conflict. First, fishermen were chased away, forced to abandon their traditional fishing grounds under threat and intimidation. Now, a barrier physically blocks the lagoon, turning the area into a no-go zone for outsiders. The next step could be land reclamation and a permanent Chinese facility, further cementing China's hold and changing the landscape forever. The US saw the barrier as a serious escalation, prompting the Nimitz' mission to assert freedom of navigation and signal international concern. China's response was forceful, showing it's willing to defend its new reality with a show of strength and resolve. The floating barrier is more than buoys. It's a line in the sand, a physical and symbolic division that marks China's expanding reach. China is daring the world to challenge its control, testing the limits of international patience and resolve. Each move tightens Beijing's grip on the shoal, gradually shifting the balance of power in the region. The risk of confrontation is growing with every new barrier, as military buildups and standoffs become more frequent and dangerous. The world must decide how to respond to China's creeping expansion, weighing diplomacy, deterrence, and the risks of escalation. The future of the South China Sea is being decided, one small step at a time, as each action shapes the fate of this contested region. After the naval standoff, the diplomatic battle erupted. The US accused China of unsafe, unprofessional actions and reaffirmed its right to operate in international waters. Washington called on China to respect international law and the 2016 tribunal ruling. The message: the US and its allies will stand up to Chinese coercion. China fired back, accusing the US of destabilizing the region and trespassing in Chinese waters. Beijing insisted its actions were legitimate and necessary to defend sovereignty. Chinese state media celebrated the Nimitz' withdrawal as a national triumph. Editorials declared the era of unchecked US naval power in the region is over. Both sides are fighting to control the narrative and win international support. The diplomatic clash is as fierce as the naval one. Nationalist sentiment is rising in both countries. The world is being forced to choose sides. The standoff has become a test of global resolve. The stakes are not just military, They're political and psychological. The battle for influence in the Indo-Pacific is heating up. The standoff quickly escalated when a Chinese Coast Guard vessel collided with a Philippine supply boat. The Philippine boat was delivering supplies to fishermen when it was intercepted and damaged. Manila responded with outrage, demanding China respect Philippine sovereignty. Calls grew for the Philippines to invoke its mutual defense treaty with the U.S. regional powers like Australia and Japan, voiced concern, urging restraint. The risk of a wider conflict is now real. Other claimants are on high alert. Both the U.S. and China are increasing their military presence in the area. Warships, Coast Guard vessels, and aircraft from multiple nations now crowd the South China Sea. Every patrol and radio call is fraught with danger. A single miscalculation could trigger a chain reaction. The region is on a knife's edge. The world is watching, hoping for restraint. The next move could determine the fate of the entire region. Beyond the headlines, ordinary people are suffering. Scarborough Shoal has long been a lifeline for Filipino fishermen. Since China's takeover, and especially with the new barrier, their livelihoods are under threat. Fishermen face harassment, blocked paths, and even water cannons from Chinese vessels. Many are now too afraid to fish, forcing families into debt or poverty. The floating barrier is the final blow, cutting them off from their traditional grounds. One fisherman lamented, "The world says it's ours, but China has put up a fence. How do we feed our families?" Their plight is echoed in villages along the Philippine coast. This is about more than economics. It's about food security and national pride. China's actions are seen as an assault on Filipino dignity. The fishermen have become symbols of resistance. Their struggle is fueling public anger and pressure on Manila to act. In this great power contest, it's the ordinary people who pay the highest price. The human cost of this standoff is real and growing. The world cannot ignore their voices. The South China Sea is now a powder keg. US and Chinese forces are locked in a dangerous dance, with the risk of miscalculation higher than ever. Crowded waters and murky rules of engagement mean a single mistake could spark war. Nationalism on both sides makes backing down politically costly. Military analysts warn that even a minor collision could escalate rapidly. The US-Philippines Defense Treaty could draw in more countries. The economic fallout of conflict here would be catastrophic. Both sides are posturing, but the line between show of force and war is razor thin. The world is watching a slow-motion crisis unfold. The need for clear communication and restraint has never been greater. The fate of the Indo-Pacific may hinge on a single decision. The next move could change history. The world is holding its breath. The Scarborough Shoal standoff is a turning point in the US-China rivalry. This contest will define the 21st century, with the South China Sea as a key battleground. China is challenging the US-led order, using both economic and military power. The region's stability, long underwritten by American might, is now in question. Beijing offers an alternative vision, one centered on Chinese leadership. Countries must now choose stick with the US or accommodate China's rise. The US faces a dilemma: respond too weakly, and allies lose faith; too aggressively, and war looms. Washington is strengthening alliances and building coalitions to counter China. The goal ensure China's rise happens within international law. The future of the Indo-Pacific will be shaped by this rivalry. More patrols, more close calls, and more diplomatic sparring are certain. The risk of conflict remains high. The Scarborough Shoal is now a test case for the world order. The long game has just become much more dangerous.